Hashima, respect. I am Astamari. I am the principal for Abundance Centres UK Development Trust. We're a learner cooperative. We're focused on teaching STEM subjects using African cultural arts. Means we use the drum, the dance, to teach advanced ideas of science, technology, engineering and mathematics. We have had for a long time a vision to have a community science lab, and previously we had planned to put it in a particular building, but due to circumstances that didn't work out. There is now an opportunity over the road. There's a housing development happening over the road which will generate 900 new homes just over the road, literally where the hospital is. The majority of that site will be turned into new houses. There are 6 sites in that space that are being preserved, partly by the mayor's office apparently, as buildings that they don't want to be destroyed and that should be made available for interim use. And the good people at Catalyst Housing have been trying to reach out to people in the area to find out what people want for those buildings. So we put in a very detailed proposal to turn this into a community science lab, planetarium and observatory. And I'd like to explain what that is.
A goal you can help with. Help us bring together 100 plus STEM professionals and serious STEM enthusiasts by spring 2022. Support North London's new groundbreaking community science lab. Spring 2022. 100 plus STEM professionals boost diversity in community science by opening up unique learning opportunities in science, technology, engineering and maths, STEM. You're a STEM professional working in science, technology, engineering, maths. We need you. You're a parent or grandparent who values STEM learning for your family and self too. We need you. You're a STEM learner, learning science, technology, engineering, maths. We need you. Abundance Centres UK has launched a bid to develop uLearn Naturally Community Science Lab, Tottenham, to get local people steamed up to the highest levels. Together we'll be bringing forward advanced public engagement in science. Today, people have unprecedented access to knowledge. The phones in our pockets allow us to tap into valuable information via the internet at any time, and the internet is updating at every moment. Plus, with the dawning of Web3, the third generation of the net, education and learning paradigms are shifting significantly. Abundant Centres steamed up learning pedagogy, being nature-centred and experiential learning, engages people in local and personal learning opportunities from idea generation through to sharing findings while working together in dynamic networks to encourage collaborative learning and civic, public, STEM engagement. Through our problem-based learning approach, learners are able to hone their research and critical thinking skills while contributing to real-world challenges and networks of progressive thought. Being a very iconic centre, the uLearn Naturally Community Science Lab, Tottenham, formerly the old water tower of St Anne's N15, will sharpen STEM insight, values and competencies locally across Haringey and London-wide through deep, hands-on scientific exploration of learners' STEM interests. Our approach to education is uniquely designed to be fully respectful to the learner's cultural heritage, making STEM more accessible. A community science lab is a great way to build local environmental observation and data gathering, respecting community histories, raising multi-generational and intergenerational knowledge attainment, strengthening community resilience and vision. This project's wonderful possibilities are now being carefully explored with the Catalyst Housing, who have won approval from the Mayor for London's office to develop over 900 homes and related facilities in Tottenham N15. Our proposal, which has been well received, will bring about a new kind of learning centre of London-wide, perhaps even nationwide importance, that raises learning engagement locally in profound ways. During this season, there's a special founder members opportunity for 100 plus STEM professionals and serious STEM enthusiasts to get involved in shaping this new learners cooperative. Our community science lab will feature an advanced biology laboratory, a planetarium, outer space projection/VR shows, an observatory, telescope and radio astronomy, open STEM learning spaces, and a lab cafe, social space for edutainment. We need you to help advance this project. We need STEM people of every experience to get steamed up together. Help us help local people fully connect with all the facilities a community science lab can offer. This may be the first time you've heard about this kind of community science engagement, so here are 2 short videos to highlight some of the practicalities involved in a science lab. First, here's a general lab safety video by the Amoeba sisters. Then we'll explore radio astronomy in 5 minutes by the MIT bloggers. These share insight and principle on 2 of the main faculties of the Community Science Lab. In summary, we'll hear a few words from Astamari, the Executive Member, Chair of Abundant Centres UK, sharing more on what a Community Science Lab is.
Labs. We love labs. They're the best part of science, the whole doing part. And since you're probably going to be doing some amazing science labs this year, we thought we'd outline a few major points of general lab safety. Because safety is a big deal. And while this is certainly not all the points of safety, always read through the safety guidelines specific to the lab you're doing, these are some major general safety rules that apply for many types of labs. First, let's talk about shoes. And hair. We have neither of those, but if you do, long hair needs to be pulled back. You should wear closed-toed shoes because you don't want to be pouring something toxic on your feet or walking on broken glass. Speaking of broken glass, bags and stuff in the aisles and lab rooms do not help. You want a clear path and not have your belongings out where someone could trip over them. And no horseplay. To protect your eyes, wear goggles. And when we say wear goggles, we all know that on your forehead doesn't count. If you do feel as though something has gotten in your eyes, you will want to use the eye wash station, which will require you to hold your eyes open under the running water. If your lab involves working with specimens or chemicals, you will likely be advised to wear gloves. Gloves are important. Yes, sometimes they make your hands feel clammy, but you know what's worse? Chemicals that can irritate or burn your skin. If you have an allergy to latex, you should make sure that the gloves you are using are latex-free. Ask your instructor. In fact, if you have any allergies, you should let your instructor know. When you finish a lab, even if you wore gloves, it's a good idea to wash your hands after time in the lab. Some labs may require you to wear an apron to protect your clothes. Depending on what type of course you are in and the type of labs you are doing, you also might have a safety shower, which will dump a very large amount of water on you if you get some type of hazardous chemical on you. If you accidentally break glassware, don't pick it up. It could cut you. A broom and a dustpan should be used to clean it up, and there should be a place designated for broken glass. Not the regular trash, where it would just break through the trash liner. If you see glassware that is chipped already, don't use it and tell your instructor. Never drink or eat anything in the lab. That includes chemicals. Don't taste or smell chemicals. Read labels. Don't ever pour chemicals that you may be using back into the bottle that they came from. As soon as you finish pouring chemicals out of a container, the container should be immediately closed. When you're done with a chemical, you want to make sure you properly dispose of it. Many chemicals can't just be put down the drain. In fact, some solid items that you use in your labs also cannot be thrown away in the regular trash and have to be disposed of as hazardous waste. Always check with your instructor. In some labs, you may have a special ventilation system, also known as a fume hood. This is used when dealing with volatile substances, which is a fancy way of describing a substance that can easily vaporize. Some of your labs may require the fume hood because some of these volatile substances may be harmful if you inhale them. When you're heating things up, like this test tube in a hot water bath, don't have the test tube pointed towards you. Use tongs or heat protective gloves to handle the test tube that you may be heating. Also, electricity and water are not a good mix. So when you're doing your super awesome microscope lab, you want to keep the water away from the electrical cord. And speaking of microscopes, we could have an entire video on just working with the microscope. But for now, we'll make sure to mention carrying it with 2 hands. One hand underneath the base, and the other holding the microscope arm. If you're using any special science equipment, it's important to know how to carefully carry it. If you are in a lab that has an open flame, obviously be aware of the flame. Review with your instructor how to operate the valve that controls the gas fueling the flame. Review with your instructor how to properly heat the various glassware that will be suspended over the flame. Every time you are in the lab with an open flame, you must keep all materials that may be flammable away from the area near the flame. Depending on the types of labs you're doing, your lab room may also have a fire extinguisher and/or a fire blanket in the room. Finally, the MSDS. It stands for Material Safety Data Sheet. It's available for pretty much every substance you use in your lab. You should refer to it because it will give you all kinds of safety information on a substance, including how to safely handle it, what to do if there's an accident with it, how to safely dispose of it, and more. Okay, so yeah, that was a lot. And there are so many more safety guidelines that may be specific to the lab that you're going to do. So you always want to go through specific guidelines in advance of your lab. We're going to put some items up here so you can pause this video and determine where those items are if they're relevant to your lab room. Remember, don't be intimidated. Just respect safety rules and guidelines because if you're following them, hands-on science is simply awesome. In addition to the hands-on part of science, you can always check out our science comic video clips that may be helpful on a variety of science topics you might cover this year. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
When you tell people that you're a radio astronomer, they often have no idea what you mean. They know what a radio is, but maybe they get astronomy confused with astrology, and they come to the conclusion that you deliver horoscopes over the radio. This is not, in fact, what radio astronomers do. Radio astronomers use telescopes like this, or arrays of radio telescopes like this. They point it at the sky, and they collect light, which is in a very specific part of the electromagnetic spectrum. This part right at the end here with the long wavelengths. For reference, you see that little narrow strip of visible light? That's what your eye is capable of seeing. But to look elsewhere, so to look in the radio, for example, you need to use telescopes. So we take our radio telescopes, we point them to the night sky, and we see this. This is what the sky looks like in the radio. Now you might look at this and think, oh yeah, I see. This is basically what the sky looks like normally, right? All the little dots are stars. And I'll stop you, and I'll say, no, you're wrong. Every single one of those dots is a radio galaxy. None of those are stars. Those blotches to the left are supernova remnants, and those big whiter blotches up here are clouds of ionized gas. So I've already made one of my points, that looking in the radio opens a window to an otherwise invisible universe. Another example. This is an optical image of the M81 group, a group of galaxies in the Big Dipper. This is the same image in the radio. You get more information. The radio image tells you more than just where the stars are. It tells you where the neutral atomic hydrogen gas is, which is correlated to where the stars are, but which shows you that the galaxies are actually interacting with each other, which is a fact that you totally miss in the optical. Another example, this is an optical image of Centaurus A, a sort of ordinary-looking elliptical galaxy. But when you look in the radio, you see that there is this feature that's totally invisible in the optical. This galaxy has huge radio lobes that are being emitted from the supermassive black hole at its center. Each of those little dots that I showed you in that picture of the radio sky is one of these radio galaxies. This is another radio image. You might have seen it before. It's the microwave cosmic background radiation, which is radiation that was emitted right after the Big Bang in its aftermath when things were beginning to cool down. It's in the radio because as the universe expanded, so did that radiation. So the radiation went to longer and longer wavelengths, and longer wavelengths is in the radio end of the spectrum. Being able to see this has totally revolutionized cosmology. It's enabled cosmologists to learn more about the early universe, learn about how the universe has evolved, learn about dark matter, and it's in the radio. So radio is the best. Another reason to observe in the radio, Earth's atmosphere actually absorbs most of the radiation coming from space, most of the electromagnetic spectrum. So you see here, those lines that are so up at the top, that means full absorption. That light doesn't get to us at all. There are only two windows. One is in the visible, that very narrow window there, and one is in the radio, that huge window over here. Bigger window means bigger range of wavelengths, means bigger range of sources. Third, there's a technique that's unique to radio astronomy called interferometry, which allows us to get very high resolution of what we're looking at. Basically, you take a bunch of different telescopes, 27 telescopes in this case, you put them in one array, you point them all at the same object, so you're looking at that object from a bunch of different angles, and you combine that information, all those different perspectives, to make one high-resolution image. You could even put those telescopes across the whole North American continent, put one in Hawaii, put one in the Virgin Islands, and get what is called the Very Long Baseline Array, which has the resolution ability to read a newspaper in Los Angeles from New York. So, a quick recap of why radio astronomy is awesome. It gives you access to this otherwise invisible universe. It enables you to perform ground-based observing, which is a lot cheaper and more convenient for astronomers. And it allows you to get ridiculously high resolution on things like the structure of galaxies using the technique called interferometry. Basically, radio astronomy is a lot more than this.
Lend your name, interest and insight to this project today. We'll give you VIP access to its development detail and future services. Get networked with other like-minded STEM professionals now. Members of our Community Science Network will be creatively engaged with UK and international leaders in science, technology, engineering and maths. Become a member today. A goal you can help with. Help us bring together 100 plus STEM professionals and serious STEM enthusiasts by spring 2022 to support this project's next stages of development. Become part of the project's core community and its special focus teams now. Register your interest now to be invited into this new network engagement space today. You'll be the first to get updates, know about project developments and enjoy special opportunities related to steamed-up learning around the project. Get listed on our special honorary packs and even get early access to project-related NFT crypto assets. Share your interests and stories in science, technology, engineering, the arts and maths.
So, we're gonna have an astrophysicist in the family.
Actually, I have to write this paper. Will you help me?
Let's take a closer look. What part of the solar system are we talking about?
Saturn.
If you were taking astrophysics, you could study in the metaverse.
Did you know the rings are made up of billions of icy particles?
Really?
Look at this.
You ready to do that paper now, right?
Yeah.
STEAM. That's STEM plus the arts. Get STEAmed up now. Register your interest today. Register your interest today.
Okay, so a community science lab is basically a laboratory, a biological laboratory, where community can come in with ideas of things they want to study. So people in the area may have something, for example, there is a mulberry tree over the road, a very famous, you may not know about this tree, but it's old, and some large body of people around here value the tree to the extent that the housing development is made around this tree. Right. So maybe someone wants to study the leaf of this tree and have a look at it under a microscope for some laboratory project. Community science lab would let them do that thing and have advanced things that they could study with that. It would allow a person, adult or child, to be trained in the ways of the science lab. It would allow them to have a mentoring by professionals, by technicians of the lab, so they're not just in that space with advanced equipment, but they're trained to be able to use it, and they're trained to also prepare their project to be in a space like that. That's the basic idea. We have two main themes that we ourselves as Abundance Centres are bringing to the lab. One of them is around beekeeping. In March this year, we carried out a Science Week program around bees, the science of bees. And we went through the whole spectrum of science factors to do with bees, from the waggle dance, which they use as a kind of figure eight pattern to tell each other where food is, where forage is. Not only where it is, but the quality of it, the abundance of it, and all kind of detail packed into some very sophisticated movements. So, we did some science of this. The whole business of pheromones, the chemicals that they release to communicate with each other about the nature of the community. We did a full spectrum for this, the genome of the bee. We did a program for this. I interviewed a whole load of people for that. And in fact, we made good connections into the Caribbean. One moment, please. So, we made good connections for people in the Caribbean to the Beekeeping Association, the Caribbean. They have associations for each island, then there's an umbrella. We're now connected to that. We're going to be a member of this. And so we've had inputs basically from advanced beekeepers, even some international award-winning beekeeper from the islands. So, with that in mind, we will be bringing bee science into the laboratory, so that when we have the program for learning about the bees, we can also add to that in-depth science studies in our own laboratory space on that thing. So that's one. The second is on hair structure science. Many years ago, we did a program on hair structure science to do with African hair. Mainly it was to do with hair to start with. And then it became clear that there were no biological images of African hair. When you look for a biological image of hair, like the cross-section, you don't see hair as an example. Wow. Right. So, and at the time we had planned to do a program to introduce this, but it's not appropriate to not use our own nest in the imaging. So we made that, and we made a resource that gives you the key math ideas that let you to perceive the hair structure. That might sound a bit strange, like why do you need the math for the hair? But you need the math for the hair because, for example, the structure of the hair it goes into a very fine fractal coiling type of dynamic. Fractal, I mean, it's a pattern that repeats itself, and it's essentially made up of a coiling of a structure that then coils with its own twin. Then that thing becomes one, and they coil with another one of that nature, and this thing becomes the hair structure. In order to perceive that, you have to be able to work with measurement in a very small detail, and they use what's called negative exponents to do that. So if you don't know what a negative exponent is, or if you're not comfortable with it, then you wouldn't be able to read a resource telling you the difference between this part of the structure and that part of the structure. So anyway, we produced a resource that does that thing, and out of that came, and by the way, we started that with Professor Donald Palmer. He gave a very nice talk for our Science Week program around hair structure. He kicked off that thing for us. So from that came a course which goes into more detail about different aspects of hair structure science. And so the natural extension of that is to have a laboratory where a person who's interested in hair can study it in a lab space once they're trained to do that. And also for people, there's a lot of people in our community who want to make products for hair. I chose the hair for a reason. I kind of guessed that maybe a large portion of the community might be interested in hair. I just had a feeling. So anyway, it hasn't really played out the right way yet, because it's science and it's math and things like this, and it seems to still bamboozle us, but it shouldn't. So anyway, this will provide an opportunity, the space will provide an opportunity for people to take their ideas of things that can go with hair or with skin or with whatever you think is good, and also analysis of the hair structure on many different factors, and be knowledgeable about it rather than just waiting for someone else to tell us something and still we don't really know, we just believe in like this. So that's what Community Science Lab is about, and those two things are the themes that we as uLearn Naturally Learner Cooperative, which is Abundant Centres UK Development Trust, same thing. That's what we will be bringing into the space. And then in addition to that, everybody else can bring what they want to bring into it, subject to capacity. This is it. I have been working with the British Science Association for many years now, doing British Science Week programs. I've now entered a Community Champions program with them, which is connecting me to different people in regard to science advancement, science engagement. So, for example, we're connected to a senior lecturer in Ulster University who works with a biomedical research institute, and literally you've been put together to play around with some ideas. So he's very pleased at the idea of this. I've obviously engaged him into it. So I'm saying that to say that when I'm talking about Community Science Lab, we have good connections around it. We have our own set of experience, and we have other connections in regard to the running of laboratories. In the Caribbean, one of my friends, who is a senior beekeeper, he was the chief scientist for Antigua for many years. So he will be involved as well. And yeah, it's like this. So that's laboratory. Regarding Planetarium and Observatory, Planetarium is a space where you can, generally, you will be in a space and you get to lay back a bit, you look up and there's some projections in the space, and near Greenwich, or if you don't go there, it's a bit of a trek. We used to have one in Baker Street, but that's closed a long time. So this, as a planetarium, will be a London-wide phenomenon because there isn't another one other than Greenwich, and even the Greenwich one is not the same ethos. It's great, but it's different. So that's one thing. I'm going to show you where we plan to put those things in a moment. I have this three-dimensional tour of the building. As you see, it's rotating there, and I'm going to take you through it. I won't say it's derelict, but it's not been used for this purpose. This is a water tower, but it's one of those buildings that's going to be converted to use by people for something, and we should use it. Right. So that's why we're communicating this to you, so we know exactly what we're talking about. And as I said, I'm going to keep it short so you can speak about your thoughts. Okay, so Planetarium is that. The Observatory is actual observation through telescopes. We plan to have two kinds of observation tools on this. One is called a ground telescope, which is literally that, a telescope. They're normally quite high powered. It allows you to see very far because it's built like that. It's visual. It's a visual tool. The other one is a radio telescope, which uses radio waves to receive patterns from beyond the Earth and then translate that into a readable way where we can perceive it with tools of the computer. Where you can see very deep into space with this. So it's two types of telescope on the roof of this building. That's our intention. Also some regular telescopes, so people can be up on there looking out as much as possible. My history of involvement with this kind of work is that we have done several things around astronomy. The one I especially enjoyed was when we did the Venus transits with Mid-Kent Astronomical Society, and a body of our members went to a place where they were gathered for the Venus transit. The Venus transit is when Venus was moving in a way that seemed to be in front of the sun, and it creates a certain effect. So it is a phenomenon. We gathered there, they were very good. They gave us access to these nice telescopes and a good reasoning, and it was engagement for us, which I don't often see us doing those things. So anyway, we have a history of that. In regard to this, I see new connections with organisations that have been based in London for 40 plus years doing astronomical work, very well resourced with equipment and contacts and funding resources, as I say. So to say, I trust that because, yeah, it's a good connection that we have for this. So I'm saying all of that to say that when I'm talking about these things, they're very tangible. It's very tangible. Okay. So let's go inside this building. Before I do that, any questions? Any thoughts? Questions or thoughts? I'm happy to hear from you.
Bit simple, but how do you protect the telescopes from the weather? Is it just how does an observatory? How do you manage an observatory?
Okay, so there's a main ground telescope which will be in a dome. That one is protected because it's a more expensive of a selection, and
that'll be put on the roof.
It's on the roof.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's domed and it's on the roof. So that has that kind of protection. And if you see those things, normally there's a shutter that kind of opens up on the side that allows access for the thing to see out, and then it's closed when it's not being used. I have seen others where they have telescopes that are simply out on display, like this, and those are made to be durable. I would imagine we're going to have covering for them so that when they're not used, they're just covered. Yeah, like this, but they're made to be durable like that. It's possible to not have them mounted and simply have them as telescopes you bring out. You have them stored, you bring them up when you're having a group session to do that thing, and then you put them away when you're finished.
Yeah, I think it's like one of the fundamentals of civilization, because all the ancient structures, all ancient civilizations always studied the stars, didn't they?
That's right.
So, and all Egypt, everything is built around the calendar.
That's right.
So, I mean, you can't get more powerful than knowledge of the stars.
You're right. Well, CSI Peter has hit a fundamental point. The reason why we're interested in astronomy, the unified knowledge approach to education has two cultural paradigms to it, or principles. One of them is Kemet, for classic reference, ancient Egypt for classic reference, and Pan-Africa. So, yes, the business of astronomy is embedded into the heritage of ancient Egypt. And if we respect those ancient cultures, then we should highly respect the practice of astronomy. And I'd like to make a point to make it clear that astronomy and astrology are not the same thing. They're not the same thing. Yeah, you laugh, but some people don't know that. It's not, there's no shame not to know that, but they're not the same thing. And essentially, astronomy is a physical science. It's grounded as a physical science. And I would leave someone else to say what astrology is. Yeah. But I'm not to say I don't have not to say. Let me just not say. Let me just not say. So, that you touched the point, and it comes to why we do it. What I should say, which I didn't say, is even the bigger reason why we have this program.
Level
Webinar,
being 9,
more detail
mastery.
on our level being
Level
9,
being 9, mastery
more
program.
detail on
Level
our
being
level being
9, mastery program.
Wow!
Mastery program. Mastery program. Level being 9, mastery.
We have a program for young people, the seed of independent schooling, called Level Being 9. Level Being 9 is a mastery program. Level 9 is the highest standard in the GCSE, and most of our children, if they're in a standard school system, will not be entered into the higher tier work for most of their subjects. Some will, of course, some will, many won't. And inside of the many that won't, there's a huge amount of injustice. There's injustice in the whole system.
Right.
Even if you accept it on a certain level, it's still heavy injustice. But my issue with it is this. The system, the standard system of education, will take a child at 11, or even before, when they get into secondary, before they get into secondary school, will take that child and start to tell them that they're a foundation tier child, meaning that they cannot get the level 9. Now the level 9 is just said as a number in the school. It's like the highest level. But what I would like to share with you is that level 9 is a person expressing their inner tutor, their own supreme being. That's level 9.
What?
Their flow, their high flow. They're in the zone with whatever it is they're doing. Now, my argument, our argument in our level 9 program is that every child that anyone that would engage with us, our schooling, our organisation, and would like to have the best for their children, it can happen. They can express this level 9. The question then becomes, how does the organisation, the family, and the child, and the network make the environment for that to happen? Which brings us back to this. So now, we'll bring our cadets into here. Our level 9 cadets will come into this place. Now, at the moment, it might be a handful of cadets. I don't know. We'll see. But that for me is the actual point, that our cadets can have this facility. Other people can have the facility. It's very nice, and it's good. It's a community space. This is not a, let's say, it's a community space. When they say community science lab, it will be over the road, and it will be the community of this area that will be able to access the space. That's what it's about. So, yeah. But there's not many spaces where our young people can access these kind of facilities. And I've tried to open some higher doors of science insights, and I know how it works now. I know what I knew before. Unless we build the space and control the space, we're not going to be able to bring our children in the right way into it. Yes.
Yeah, I was just going to say,
Greetings.
hello. I'm very excited to hear what you're saying because, like, even the fact I'm at this event.
Sorry, before you speak, can I just, let me just turn this down a little bit, 'cause I think it's a little bit too loud. One moment. It's good to see you. Okay. Yes, hello. How are you?
I'm fine, thank you. How are you?
Oh, I'm well. I'm
Yeah.
enjoying this. I'm pleased that we're here.
Yeah.
We've got to this point.
No, thank you for
what
inviting me.
came
I was just
before
saying
this
hello,
point.
everybody. Basically, hello.
When you made your comment in the meeting downstairs,
Yeah.
and what I picked up on, what I saw was the teacher in the passion, and then it's after that I didn't know anything about
Yeah,
you.
you didn't know
I
nothing
didn't know you
about
taught
me. You
for
didn't know I
this,
was coaching.
but I saw some things, and then you spoke some things, and
Yeah.
it's become clear to me that there's a lot of alignment, because for example, we have forms where we're using dance movement to explore astronomy ideas.
And I always
Proper,
wanted,
not. I mean, there's a way to do things like that that is very sort of superficial to the point. Then there's a way to do it where you're like a fractal to the bigger picture. That's what I'm talking about. And to do that, you have to be skilled movements and interest to learn that. And the whole business of storytelling, poetry, these things are at the fundamentals of African education. To tell story. The challenge that we have, or we perhaps missed, is that we should be embedding all of the things that we call academic study into traditional story forms. And bringing those things into dramas that make those things just come to life, so that a child just sees the drama and picks up all the principles. Then when the thing is unpacked differently, it makes sense. That's our way to do it. But I've not seen national institutions do that, as in national government institutions for African countries to do that.
Because once you teach somebody that your brain is your most powerful tool, they know that people won't rely on them, so that's why they will never teach it.
Well, that side of it, the never is, our concern is to do it.
Yeah, exactly.
So, for that I commend you for that.
And I commend you because I can feel the energy in that. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, we're building.
Yeah.
Ed,
Mr. Murray, thank you for putting on this event, and I think the project is a really good idea. At this stage, if everything goes according to plan, do you have any timelines?
I do. What I'd like to do I'd like to take a few more questions when I come to the timeline.
Sure.
And if you have more questions, put them forward now. I'd like to go into the building just to take you on a tour inside the space so you can see it. And the gist of the timeline is that the housing development will start in 3 years' time. It should be completed in 7 years' time. The preparation for the interim use should be within 6 to 9 months' time. So these buildings, this is one of 6 buildings. This building is it looks like a building on its own, but some of the buildings, in quotes, are like sprawled out complexes, like old hospital admin blocks, like a whole sprawled out area with many, many rooms, many big spaces, small spaces. And what's going to happen to those things is they will be turned into workspaces for people who want to run whatever they want to run in there, if they know about it. So that's why I'm telling you for this. And people should have to know that the good people at Catalyst are interested in engaging communities' thoughts and input and presence. That's what they've said. So, yeah, we put in a full bid for this. I'm expecting, I haven't been physically into the building yet, but I've been advised by the director of the project and the head of community investment that we'll be looking at it soon. I'll be able to look inside that building physically, but they kindly sent this document, which I don't think is public domain, but it's good. Any other questions before I jump into this flow? Okay, let's go.
Roughly, what are the dimensions of each of the rooms, just so one can just gauge the total width of each room?
Let me. This tool is very interesting. So let me show you.
Oh wow! Interesting tool.
Right.
Okay.
This is the building.
Ah.
Okay, so this is a very brief presentation on the floor plans and image hints for visualizing the SketchUps to help improve the way that the SketchUps are done so that other people can see what we mean by the community science lab. This is a 3D view of the building. I'm just rotating it. This is the front. This is the back. You see the back has these stairs. If you note the stairs, because on the image I'm going to show soon, you'll see the stairs again. Stairs at the back here. We're going to speak about the ground floor first. So this is the ground floor. You will note that we are opening up this area here. So this middle wall, the idea is to remove it or to have it significantly altered so it appears more as an open space. This room retains itself and there's a doorway here. The back where the current stairs are, this stairway will go. The back wall will be the entrance into the building. And on the back of the building, here on this side, here coming as an extension on this side of the back, here would be an entrance coming in, so that would come into a lift shaft and also into an area where you have stairs. So this is a whole structure added to the back of the building. I'm visualizing this as a clear glass see-through structure, so you can see into the lift and you can see into the stairways, and so you obviously see people moving up and down that. Right, so that's the extension. In this image, the back would be round here. The back is here. This appears to be the front. They've got a doorway here, but don't worry about that for now. The back is here. So, this is the lab cafe area that I mentioned. The wall is removed. The lift, the stairs, the front doors here, two doors. One goes into the lift, comes through the lift into the room. this one comes into the stairway. Probably there'll be a wall here separating the lift. I suppose that makes sense. And then a doorway here. This would probably be the main doorway in a way that comes into the cafe, because you can just walk straight through into that. Okay, so open plan area. The second floor, or rather the first floor, which is the first floor from the ground floor, is open plan. This is the planetarium. Planetarium is generally an area where you have projections. We're going to lay it out in a way where we have pods, seated pod kind of spaces, where people sit in these pods and have visors, and the visors gives you the projection, which is a bit different from a normal planetarium, but I think it's the future of the planetarium. So this is the second floor here. Yeah, I think that's a good view here. So again, the idea is that this wall and this wall is coming out or being made into some kind of arching structure so that it's more open plan. The lift is on the beyond this back wall, so there'll be a doorway here and here that lets you come in through the stairs or the lift into the space. And in this area here, this ground floor area, will be some pods and a facility to project onto the ceiling, which would obviously have the right kind of material to have a domed sense and allow for projection on the ceiling, but also for just experience through the visors. So this is the planetarium space. Second floor. The second floor is the biolab, bioscience space. So you come up obviously through the lift or the stairs. Doorways here. These doors on this floor would have a different kind of security to them from the first floor and the ground floor. When you come through, there's a reception. This door from the reception would also have a strong security on it. Then you come into the laboratory space. If you consider all of this the secure laboratory space, the drawings that you're going to do for the lab would be one of these rooms. But you may be able to do it in such a way that you see through the door, either see through the door into it or see from in the room beyond the door into what's behind it. So depending on your perspective and the skill for that, you may be able to get a sense of other things from the lab to the admin area or something like this. Okay, that's the second floor, which is the bioscience lab. The third floor looks very similar floor layouts. So again, through the lift or the stairs, through the doors, which are secured, reception, secured door here, astronomy lab on this side as well, and an admin zone. Astronomy lab is different from the biolab in that it will look more like a computer room, really, whereas the other one will look more like a lab, like a regular science lab. So I've shown some images of what I think would be acceptable for illustration of the astronomy lab. We'll come to that. Then you come to the roof. So again, through the lift or the stairs, secure doors, reception area, secure door. Then this is now an open plan area on the roof. Now, I expect that not only would the edges obviously have guarding so people can't fall off the edge or can't climb over the edge. Not only would it have that, but we might need to have screening that stops you from seeing the houses below, so that people who live in the area do not have any concern about being viewed from a building with telescopes on it. Anyway, for now, I don't think you need to worry about that for the illustration, but just bear it in mind, it's a consideration. When you come through this door into this area, you have the main ground telescope here. This is the domed structure, and that will have a big telescope in it, a powerful telescope. That's the kind of thing that could be staffed by a person, where you look through it in that way, and you just have a much stronger view than the smaller ones, but could also be controlled by remotely. They tend to be like that. But the dome structure is part of this unit, which is on top of the building, on top of the roof. On this side, the radio telescope is the satellite dish. The thing that looks like a satellite dish, that's the radio telescope. So the information from this is going into the room below where the computer suites are, which is the astronomy lab. Here, where it says general telescopes, I have an image which shows an array of general telescopes. So that's what that area is for. You'll see a few of them, so a collective of people could be up at the same time using those telescopes together. This is the observatory. Now, I don't think we would want to dome it. It's probably better to keep it open to the elements, but secure so people are safe up there. But that's the basic idea. So that's the illustration for this. I'm going to go through that again with more detail in terms of imagery, and we'll just talk through that briefly. So we're back to the ground floor. Okay, so this is an image of the actual ground floor as it is right now. As we said, this wall and this wall are going to be altered significantly to make it more open plan. But still, it's not that big a space really. So we have to be very creative how we fit a cafe bar type presentation space in there. But let's see. This image is the corner here, showing you the height. This image is the entranceway, which when we're here, it's this entranceway here is this, and so this wall here is coming out or being significantly altered so it looks open plan. At the back where the stairs is, that stairs is going to go, and then behind that is the extension. So where the glass is here, in this passage between these two walls would essentially be two doorways that come through, one from the lift and one from the entranceway. Probably there'll need to be other doorways as fire exits. I would expect we'd have to put other doorways on this building, and there's one here behind the camera, so that's one thing, but we'll see. Don't worry about that for now. Here is an image of the stairways that I like in terms of the glass style, the glass lift, the glass walkway. So this gives you some ideas for that. This is an image of the bar area. The use of the stools and extensions from the wall to kind of maximize the space. That's a good idea. This is obviously a bigger space than we have, but that gives you some sense of the vibes, possibly. This image down here is showing something where you have a vibe of planetary projection on the ceiling, some spacey vibe in the building as a whole, in that floor. I'd like that. This is not the planetarium, but we should have that projection type of vibe of space in that room, in the cafe, so people who come into the cafe have a sense of the planetary vibe. So you can feature that in the image somehow. Next to the lab cafe is a learning workshop, a learning room. So this is an idea for that. My ideal is a blend between these two types of vibe, where you have some kind of space where the formal structure could be there. These tables could probably be collapsible, but rather than just fixed in a space, but a vibe like this where there's projection equipment or a screen, standard tuition, but also this vibe down here, which is more relaxed, but still can be a tuition space. So somewhere between this is the idea. This is the first floor planetarium. So obviously up through the stairs, up through the lift, through the doorways, which have a certain degree of security, not the same as the next floor up. The floors up will have higher security on the doors, and I'm not sure whether that will come through in the images that you do, but I just want to make it clear to you, point it out. But the lab space, the bio lab space and the astronomy lab space and the roof need to have different levels of security on them. So really the public are just have easy access to the ground floor and the first floor, or easier, and the other floors are harder. So open plan, some edging on the wall, just because I don't think you can remove so much wall that we would like to do. But let's say it's open like this. The planetarium generally a planetarium is like this. These seats, if you've been to one, you'll know that the seats recline. In a planetarium, seats recline, and so you're all looking up, but we're not going to have enough space to do that kind of thing. So you may have some seats like that, but I would prefer this kind of pod idea, because the pods could be movable and tiltable, and we give people visors, and then the planetary shows through the visor, and ideally connected in a way where the people can see each other in the virtual space, but in the outer space. So that would be interesting. That's technology. But the pods is basically the idea. When you draw the illustration, illustrate it with these pods laid out around the room. Some of these planetarium spaces, they have like really comfy chairs, like group chairs, like a lounge type of chair. And they generally put them at the front, so people with basically more money would have the ability to have those ones or something like that. So you may have something slightly different, like group pods, like 2 people, 3 people in a pod. Yeah, it doesn't have to all be single like this. So you may have some that are multi-person pods. This video, which you can watch yourself, gives a nice idea about how the virtual planetary show can be. Next floor up is the bioscience lab. Bioscience lab has a reception area, an admin area. All doors have higher security. The biolab is illustrated through images like this, featuring people of African heritage in the room doing the work. I've shown some images later on as more examples of that, but this kind of furnishing in the lab space. These are examples of images that we've used in past advertising for courses that we do. So you can see the vibe is already there, and you can incorporate these kind of images into the illustration. Another example here. This is the astronomy lab. It has the same structure as the floor below. So reception, admin, 2 labs on the sides. As I said, this is basically computer rooms. So yeah, that's the gist of it. The top floor, reception area. Again, these doors have a different level of security to them. You have the main ground telescope, which is in a domed structure, which I'm going to show in a moment. And then the radio telescope, which is like the satellite dish. And the general telescopes, which are small telescopes in an array, in a row like this here. That is this. So this is the ground telescope, which will be on the roof. This is the radio telescope, which will be on the roof. Here you see another example of how someone's put that on the roof, and the array of general telescopes. So this gives an idea of that. These are actual cadets. These are actual people who have been in our class. I would like their faces. If you can have the skill to capture their faces into this imagery somewhere. Obviously, the younger children should be appearing to be supervised. So, because it's not the lab spaces are not free play spaces. So, but I would like children to be in there. I'd like it to be seen that they are there under guidance. So, if you can capture the actual characteristics, particularly these three, this young lady here, this young man here, and this young lady here, that would be very charming to them and to the people who know them. And obviously this young man here as well. Yeah, these young ladies, you can capture them as well. They came through a college placement, so they're not directly our cadets, but they were on a work placement. So by all means, you can bring them in. Bring in diversity, bring in more characters, but I want to ensure that African people are well represented in the imagery. This is a fundamental point.
We need you. We need you to help advance this project. We need STEM people of every experience to get steamed up together. Help us help local people fully connect with all the facilities a community science lab can offer. STEAM. That's STEM plus the arts. Get steamed up now. Register your interest today. Register your interest today.